The assessment process is a logical carry forward of the evaluation process. And one of the frequently asked questions would be, what is the difference between evaluation and assessment? It's like two first cousins. Evaluation is by definition a feedback mechanism. There may or may not be a measurement. Assessment will always require a measurement. Assessment will have to be specific because there are consequences of assessment. There are also consequences of evaluation, but the consequences would be of a variety which are of the nature of a general feedback. So, what are the elements of assessment? There are three elements. First of all, in the context in which we are talking, and remember this is a discourse on organization management, you must have something to evaluate, and something in this case is an organization. The second, there must be an assessment team, and please notice I am talking of a team, I am not talking of one person's assessment. 3, there must be some persons who want to use the assessment, otherwise why do it? So, the three elements of an assessment process are the organization, which is the main unit of assessment here, which will operationally mean heads of the department, scientists, administrative staff, sources of information. The assessment team, which needs to use appropriate measurement tools to collect data regarding the organization and its activity, and the people who use the assessment results for making the organization more effective by setting priorities. So, assessment must lead to setting priorities, policies, plans, etc. And if they already exist, review it. And if reviews have already been done, update it. Steps in an organization's assessment are, first and foremost, like everything else in management, be clear, why do you want to assess? Now, there can be very amorphous questions, like in a course evaluation, the student is asked, is the marking transparent? Now, transparent is a very fanciful word. It is very popular these days. Everything has to be transparent. I do not see why everything must be transparent. I would like to do a lot of things in a transparent environment. For example, I would like to sleep with somebody watching me through, how do I turn, twist, and you can think of all sorts of other things which you would not like to do in a transparent environment, but suddenly the word transparent has become very fashionable. Everything must be transparent. So, somebody must have decided that evaluation must be transparent. Of course, it has to be transparent, everything must be transparent. But tell me, in an atmosphere in which the students get back their answer sheets, how can it be more transparent than that? Therefore, a question like, is the evaluation transparent, in an environment where answer sheets are given back to the students, has really no meaning. That question will still be asked, because it is a good question to ask. Like for example, you have learned the word perspire and you do not like to use the word sweat. So, even when it is 7 degrees temperature, you like to say, I am perspiring. But sweetheart, how are you perspiring? It is 7 degrees temperature. Oh, is it? But I like to use the word perspire. Now, I do not want to comment upon that. What is the objective of the assessment exercise? So, you can't ask a question merely because it is nice words, good to hear, fanciful words. It must be a focused assessment. Therefore, is the marking transparent? Wrong question in assessing course evaluation because it does not hold valid when you are giving back the answer scripts. Yes, if you are not giving back the answer scripts, that question could be relevant. Size and nature of the organization may be just too large. You know, you put 100 plus students in a classroom, then no matter what is the genius-like quality of the teacher, I would be willing to put out an assumption that it will be a rare teacher who, after teaching them even 42 hours in a semester, knew the names of even half of them. So, what do? You devise means like put your photograph on your term paper, carry your name tag all around. Great idea, must always be done. My purpose is simply to say size matters. The nature of the organization matters. There are no standardized assessment evaluations. And if you do not change the assessment parameters with reference to the size of the population, you are going to have fun and games at your hand. Obviously, some analogies I would like to stop there, because it can have very unique overtones, and those unique overtones I do not want to get into. Areas to be covered during the assessment exercise. No assessment can be comprehensive. Again, comprehensive is like transparency, very nice to sound, very difficult to achieve. To assess, you must know what is it that you are looking for. Yeah, if you are assessing the learning ability, well and good. If you are assessing the quantum of knowledge, well and good. If you are assessing the ability to express, well and good. Do not say, was there a learning environment? What is a learning environment? Pray tell me. Aristotle would have found it difficult to develop indicators of the learning environment. If you assess through these yardsticks, you are going to get into trouble. Now, I have been giving you examples of from an academic institution. The same kind of ambiguity can be there if your performance appraisal performa is inaccurately drawn up, because you will be generating a lot of data which has no meaning. I know of technology institutions, performance appraisal systems, where they have questions on discipline, punctuality, teamwork, and believe me, yes, even innovation. There was not one question on ability at technological appreciation. And when I pointed that out, the executive director says, I do not believe it. I said, do not believe it. Get them to put up with the performance appraisal performa to you. And then he looked at it and he said, how could this have happened? He said, that is a question which I should ask you, not you asking me how did it happen. The message is very simple. Sometimes the obvious gets skipped because you are talking of it too much, which is what leads me to one of my favorite organizational hypotheses. You can't achieve excellence unless you achieve routine being practiced with benchmarked standards. It is only when the routine is achieved with benchmarked standards that you can begin talking of excellence. There is just too much talk of excellence, therefore, it has lost its character and meaning. In an organization where papers can't be found, where filing is incomplete, where you want to link a paper file with another file, nobody knows where the preceding file is, the assistant concerned is on leave. Is that the kind of answer you get in any worthwhile organization? And then you start talking of excellence. What is the meaning of excellence you are talking about? And as you look around the real world, you will find that these analogies and examples are not all that remote A lot of you will find it easy to relate to. Therefore, what is the proposition I am putting across? If you are talking of assessment, make your defining characteristics specific, make their measurements credible, outline the standards. Suppose there are 5 possible grades you get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I should know what does that 3 mean here, what does that 4 mean there. So, at the next to each column there must be the figure given which benchmarks the standard, that out of 5 you must get at least 2 to be of an acceptable standard. If you get more than 2, you are better than the standard. If you get less than 2, you are lower than the standard. There is nothing sacrosanct about 2, it could be 3, it could be 4, it could be anything. Potential users of assessment results and recommendations. Ultimately, the user will decide how relevant the assessment is. Organizational model on which the assessment methodology is to be based has also to be kept in mind. Steps in organizational assessment. Framework for conducting the assessment exercise has to be clear. When do you make it formal? When do you make it informal? When do you do it in a structured manner? When do you use participant observation? And there are any number of techniques. This is not the best place to get into different types of techniques, but what you got to understand is that there has to be a framework of conducting the assessment. There is evaluation of data. Remember, data can be fudged. If you have 5 dimensions, it is a rarity if you get the lowest in all 5. That is humanly possible, but extremely rare. Similarly, getting 5 outstandings, that is humanly possible, but extremely rare. Methods of data collection I have already talked to you about. Methodology for conducting the assessment exercise. This is very important, which is why enumerators are so important in data collection. They have to be trained. Empirically, it has been established that if you have a group of even 30 people and if you give an instruction, at least 3 to 5 of them will not follow it fully. And I am talking of a fully literate group. Therefore, people have to be helped in the methodology for the collecting data for the assessment exercise. Does not mean you prompt them what answers to give, but you prompt them to understand what the question is. It is one of those truisms in life. Very few can answer the life issues. Who knows the answers to life's problems? The bigger question is, do you know at least what are the life's questions? Now, if you do not even know the questions, how do you know the answers? But my pun was entirely unintended. I was talking of a simple mundane exercise of helping people to understand a questionnaire. Results, analysis and recommendations then follow. A quote: human resources function is increasingly important in shaping the new organization in which quality and commitment of people is key to survival. Every aspect of human resource management needs to be reassessed, but none is more pivotal or difficult than performance appraisal. This is true. It was true in 1992, it is true today, and it will so remain always. Performance appraisal is always a very dicey thing. Therefore, you have to create a format where you balance the appraisal of today with reference to the benchmarks, comparing it to the future and also comparing it to his potential, and such a performance appraisal performa is very difficult to come about. Performance appraisal can be defined as the systematic review of performance of staff on a written basis at regular time and intervals. The holding of appraisal interviews at which staff have the opportunity to discuss performance issues on a one-to-one basis, usually with their immediate manager. It supplements the informal ongoing process of evaluating staff with a systematic approach. Look, evaluation is a continuous process. It is a natural process. It is always a mutual process. It is always happening whenever two people are interacting. So, what is the difference between a natural evaluation process and the appraisal I am talking about? The appraisal that I am talking about is structured, is scientific, it is tested, it is predictable. Whereas the other evaluation is informal and continuous. The appraisal objectives would be some of the following: providing feedback to the employees on job performance, creating a basis of improvement, and thereby identifying the training and development needs of the employees. To eliminate uneven standards that may vary from manager to manager. Remove the temptation to judge employees by their personalities. Motivate the employees with appraisals. Help create the most productive workforce possible. Attributes of an effective performance appraisal system. The first concern while designing an appraisal system should be to set up a system that is as fair as possible. People should see appraisal process to be objective. Which is why it is important to understand that there must be a process of bias correction, which will come out either through the assessor's bias or the bias of the people who do not understand what is being sought to be evaluated. The criteria against which the employee is judged should be clearly related to the demands of the job, which means you are not appraising the person, you are appraising his competency. These are two different things. How does it matter if he can't speak good English, if he does the job on a CNC machine with great precision and he knows exactly how to operate it? His ability to speak English, or for that matter any language, is incidental to the job description, but the same will not apply to a teacher. If a teacher does not have a reasonable command on the language which he is using to conduct a class, you can't say how does it matter if he does not know the language, if he knows the subject matter. For heaven's sakes, his job is communication and he may know the subject matter. The bigger question is he able to convey it? This is not a business discussion. The criteria against which the employee is judged should be clearly related to the demands of the job, as I just explained. The outcome should be judged, not the person. Performance appraisal is centrally linked to the motivation of the employees. It provides some of the essential components of effective motivational strategies. A feedback that permits an employee to learn how well he is performing is very useful input to organizational growth. Goal or objective setting that specifies what the person should be doing always helps in that direction. Team building that allows the employee to participate with peers and their managers in solving problems that impede their productivity is a very positive outcome of performance appraisal systems. and monetary incentives that reward the good performance. I have repeatedly tried to emphasize through this explanation that appraisal and evaluation must have a domain, must have an objective, must have instruments, must have standards, must have a framework, must have a process, must have above all relevance to what is happening there. And still, organizational evaluation cannot be a stand-alone process. It has to have linkages with the institution's selection process and other functions. Let me give you an example. I was sitting on the selection committee of a denominational college. They were selecting a teacher of English. The principal happened to be a man from that subject area. We ultimately shortlisted 3 people. I was for A, the principal was for B, and C was a good second to both. The details of the conversation apart, I said A knows his subject matter, and the principal said so does B. Maybe not as good as A, but in this college we have a sense of fellowship, a sense of colleagueship. I take in a person like A, it will be the beginning of the U-turn to destroy the character of the English department. I have taught both of them, I know both of them. I much prefer to take a scholar of a lower category, but a human being for a better category for the kind of team I want in this college. I am not going to comment on that. Ultimately, the principal had his way, and candidate B was selected, with the principal agreeing that A was a better scholar. But you heard the argument, and I do not have to waste time by repeating the argument. At times, your evaluation process is a linkage to the selection process. It is a question of what kind of profile you are looking for. Therefore, which committees which go on saying research, more research, publication here, publication there, publication everywhere, very useful. Who has quarrels with that? And even they would agree that it is useful to keep in mind his ability to communicate, his ability to teach, his ability to be objective in appraisal. Nobody disagrees with that. The area which does not come up as often as it should, can he be a mentor to his students? Can by his conduct and the principles which he follows in his personal conduct of professional matters be an exemplar to students on simple things like being on time, being reliable on word, diligent in all that he does, seriously interested in his students, and above all, does he care enough to help in the growth of those who let him help in their growth? What do you do with a person with qualities X, Y, and Z if you are not also looking at this quality? Now, of course, this is more easily stated than acted upon, because what are the indicators? How do you get evidence of this? Now, the way to do it is the way the industry has developed. Before you buy a machine, you get a client list. and you find out from them how has this machine worked out. Selection cannot be pushed through, and better institutions don't rush it through with half an hour of interview. Find out from the institutions where he has worked, not just from the head of that institution with whom he may not have worked at all, because he left that institution before this head came in, but find out from his former students. Each teacher has a brand name. Get the brand reputation. It may be erroneous, it is not that all brand reputations are accurate, but at least it will mark a beginning. All that I am saying is, and I am giving you examples from research institutions, I am giving you examples from academic institutions, I am giving you example from the industry to show that performance appraisal, no matter in which domain you carry it out, is a complicated process, and believe me, no matter how well you do it, you will be still short of perfection. Therefore, keep practicing it. Just as you become a good machine maintenance man by having handled that kind of a problem 20 times. When my BlackBerry mechanic comes, I can almost with the precision of plus or minus a month tell you how long has he been working on BlackBerry instruments. And I had one such experience last evening, and I told the man who had come, you have less than 6 months experience, don't you? He said, sir, yes, but how do you know? And I told him. He said, my God, I didn't know you were observing for all that. I said, you don't have to. You just have to be alert. Because you observe for a pre-programmed framework, but if you are alert, you look for cues. Because I don't want to get into too many technical details, but at one stage he faltered as only a novice would. He said, can I use your internet? I said, why? He said, sir, my internet is failing. I said, how does an internet fail? It can fluctuate. What you are finding is what you are looking for is an alibi which will help you to explain why you are taking such time. This whole operation should not have taken you more than 5 minutes. Appraisal, therefore, is expertise which shows. In a better organization, you have sensors which bring it out. It has links with motivation, it has links with succession planning, it has links with the training of the employees. Appraisal has links everywhere. In fact, in some of the performance appraisal committees that I have sat through, especially with the government and the corporate world, we have included a column which is mandated to write, given this kind of performance, what are the training and the development interventions this person needs. Yet, the assumption that everyone needs training and development interventions, no matter what is the seniority he has and no matter what is the designation which he holds, is still not there. I have known very many people who have held fancy designations goof upon this, because they believe training and development is only a remedial intervention. No, it is not. Training and development is a continuous requirement to keep updated. It is not just a remedial intervention. Like in the olden days, you went to hospital to die. When the doctor said the disease is incurable, then you took a last shot by taking him to the hospital, and that was the second last shot, and the last shot was you brought him home and started reciting to him Gita. Some things which I have never understood. Gita was recited in the heat of the battle. Why do they start reciting Gita at the time of death? Maybe that is my personal problem. No irreverence meant at all. By all means, recite Gita at the time of death if it gives you peace, but also remember Gita during actual life, and I might say during performance appraisal. Karmanyevadhikarasto ma phaleshu kadachana. That's what performance appraisal is about. Your right is to the work thereof, not the fruits thereof. Your right is to work, not the fruit. Na karmanyevadhikarasto ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma, no, phaleshu, fruits, kadachana, ever. You say that to an industrial workforce, you will cause a riot at your hands. They will want to know where you learnt your performance appraisal for. And yet, everyone knows like the back of his hand that the better breed wants performance appraisal for the sake of appraisal, for the sake of improvement. That there may be performance rewards is an important aspect. But it cannot be a precondition to all interventions of evaluation. That is the broader point which I am trying to make. According to Combs and Schwab, the objective of performance appraisal scheme can be categorized as evaluative based on history, developmental plans for the future. Now, this is very important, because of the amazing thing is a lot of people are promoted to the next level of work on the basis of their performance at the preceding level of work. Now, if you have not understood it, you may be a wonderful constable, but you may turn out to be a terrible havaldar. These are two different job descriptions. So, you can't say you have outstanding for 5 years as a constable, therefore, you will be the first one to be made a havaldar. And if you follow that principle, well, then of course, I do not want to comment. For any performance appraisal system with linkages to rewards and promotion systems, there must be an occasion to assess the potential. And unless you are assessing the potential, you will not be able to judge whether this person is fit for promotion or not. Therefore, given the kind of unprofessional wilderness through which all this walks through, the wonder is not that our organizations have the problems which they have. The real wonder is our organizations work as well as they do, because with this kind of unprofessional parading of parameters and factors, the catastrophe can be huge. Certain amount of overlap as past performance determines future course of action targets can happen. Who conducts appraisals? The immediate manager, the manager's manager, self-appraisal. I personally consider this very important. And believe me, it works, because truth has its own force. I will give you an example. As an academic, many institutions permit their employees to do self-appraisals. So, year of grace 1994, 1995, I was working on organizational effectiveness in automobile industry. Very good, research project done, tick mark. No publications? No publications, sir, I had just begun work. Okay. Year 2, 2005, 2006, working on organizational effectiveness on automobile industry. Any research output? No output, sir, data being collected. Very good, tick mark, done. Third year, organizational effectiveness on automobile industry. Any research publications done? Yes, sir, one paper being prepared. Very good, tick mark. Year number 4, by which time you are in 97, 98. Has that paper been published? No, I am still working on organizational effectiveness in automobile industry. The paper has been sent for publication. Now, if in 4 years all you have succeeded, assuming all that you say is true, nobody is questioning the truth, all you have done is sent up one paper for publication, then I think it is about time to close the research project. A lot of self appraisal can be self evaluatory, and this can be done in the industry, and this can be done elsewhere. In the industry, I have been working on plant improvement plans year 1, year 2, you are still working on plant improvement plans year 2, year 3, you are still working on plant improvement plans. If your boss still is permitting you to work on plant improvement plans, he deserves to be sacked as a boss. You can't take 3 years or working on plant improvement plans, which brings in another very important dimension of evaluation, subordinate development. It is the responsibility of every superior to develop his subordinate, and if you have not developed your subordinates, there is something wrong. There is of course upward appraisal, there is peer level appraisal, there is multi appraisal, there is appraisal by outsiders. We know all this. We shall come back to this as and when required. There is always a resistance to evaluation. Everyone talks of appraisal, nobody wants to be appraised. Like everyone talks of training, but everyone wants the other person to be trained. Why is there resistance to evaluation? We have not yet created the universal environment of accepting evaluation as a positive step in our own self growth. We have given to ourselves images of perfection, we have given to ourselves images of infallibility, and we feel embarrassed when somebody points out a mistake. I will give you an example. Just check out yourself, and you do not have even to send a feedback to me. How many times in a day, forget a day, how many times in 2 days, or forget even 2 days, how many times in a week do you ever say, thank you for correcting me? Which means what? You never make a mistake. Of course, you never make a mistake. Your grandmother always believed that. How many times do you ever say in a conversation, oh, I didn't know that? You know everything. You are perfect. You don't need to be corrected. It's about time you got a headache, because the halo is so tight around your head. How can you be so good? This kind of unprofessional environment which we create around ourselves is always an ally in universal improvement, and this has to be resisted. Speaking lexically, resistance means a force that retards, hinders, opposes a motion. And ergo, when a person tries to evaluate another person, he is trying to mobilize his opinion, beliefs and judgment against him. No wonder he is met with resistance. No one likes to be judged, because people fear that judgment will lead to condemnation. We need to snap this linkage. Of the various hypotheses I have had and I have shared with you as I have gone along through this discourse, remember I told you, unless you de-link the consequences of passing on the information to the effects of that information, process of speedy information transfer will not take place. I thereby recommend another de-linkage. The process of evaluation should be de-linked from the process of judgment. Evaluation has to be rated at the benchmark of a feedback. Just as for useful organizational effectiveness, I am firmly of the view that information flow must be encouraged for the sake of it. All information passed does not necessarily to have a consequence, because then people will stop passing on the information, they will start assessing the fallout of that information, and depending upon whether they see the fallout positive, they will push it. If they do not see the fallout positive, they would discourage it. At the same time, it should be noted that some people do welcome the evaluation as they think it helps to understand where they stand. Of course, there are honorable exceptions, but honorable exceptions do not make the rule. Recent research shows that 76% of the global 2000 firms do not conduct benchmarking at least once a year. Only 19% do conduct it annually, while just 14% continuously refresh their benchmarks, a abysmally low figure. Imagine a situation where only 14% continuously refresh their benchmarks. Most common source of resistance to change, and this is worked out empirically. People say, how can you evaluate me? My job is creative. I sit here, I close my eyes and I dream, and I wait for muse to come and kiss me on the forehead. Now, what happens if the muse does not kiss me on the forehead for 10 years? My answer is, give your job to somebody else. The muse may like that person better. I am sorry, this sort of thing cannot be permitted to continue beyond a point. My job is creative. Better still, I do not make standard widgets. Oh, I am such a creative person. Standards are too, when I make a widget, and that's a design which is unique. I make it so unique, nobody can use it. Silly, don't you realize in the industry everything has to be as per standard specifications for it to be put for consumer use? I am a professional, I can't be evaluated. And mind you, all these statements have been picked out of surveys. And finally, I do not want to be evaluated. Who are you, may I know? Why don't you want to be evaluated, and why shouldn't you be evaluated? Because if you could evaluate my performance, you would realize I haven't been doing my job very well lately, but I may have to change and I do not want to. So, in each case, I have given what is the real meaning of what is said in block letters. The resistance of change may be because of many factors. Persons who feel overburdened already. Above all, you do not see any reason why they want you to change, and this is where a systemic failure is the answer. You have not created an environment where change is essential to survival, and that will happen very early in a environment where there are many centuries existing together. You change your target group, you stay in business. Recently, I had the case of a major industry in the consumer domain. They just altered all their markets. They have bought themselves a life of at least another 4 years with the same production machine, with the same skills, with the same practices. Then of course, there is this problem of skepticism about elected officials. No matter what you do, it is those people who call the shots. I do not want to discuss it. Fear that data will be used to reduce budgets, to eliminate staff or in other negative ways. Therefore, there is a resistance to evaluation. Perceiving it as a sign of no confidence in their abilities. The moment you evaluate, people say you do not have confidence in me anyhow. Fear that it is the first step in an enforced speed up of operations. Now, this is a very anxiety prone reaction to which there can be no solutions other than the solutions of apathy. Simple fear that performance inefficiency is hitherto hidden will now be revealed by performance evaluation. Therefore, people develop a stake in the status quo. It is so comforting and so reassuring that you know you will never be hurt. The reasons for resistance are many. The supervisors have their own reasons for resisting appraisal, and these are again some of the arguments culled from the field. Regular evaluations are useless, they say nothing new. So, why spend time evaluating? Their people will not like it. It will damage relationships. This is a great factor in India against evaluation. Sir, he is friends to me, I do not want to do it. What kind of a friend you are? As a friend, you should be helping him to grow. There is a potential for disagreement. Sir, I do not want to get into this, you sort it out. And then there is this philosopher who has this nagging fear, who knows if I am wrong? To be or not to be, that is the question. Now, whichever side of the argument you are, one is regular evaluations are useless, to they fear the fear of being wrong, you are forever barking up the wrong tree, and it is one end of the spectrum to another. Supervisors rightfully fear making wrong judgment, being challenged about them, and looking foolish if proved wrong. I think one of the very important traits of an effective work organization is the ability to distinguish between a bona fide mistake and a bad mistake. A bona fide mistakes must be overlooked. A careless mistake, and worse, a conscious mistake, must always be punished. And unless organizations develop this kind of a judgmental frame, this kind of a discriminatory ability, this kind of an ability to distinguish between chaff and grain, organizations have very little hope. I shall be discussing with you shortly how to counteract resistance.